Marcus Chen stood at attention behind the crystalline throne, his black uniform pristine despite the humid air of the Galactic Council chambers. For 3 years, he had served as royal guard to Princess Zara of the Terran Commonwealth, and in all that time, he had spoken perhaps 50 words total. The other guards called him the statue behind his back, thinking his silence meant weakness. The princess shifted uncomfortably as Ambassador Krill of the Zentari Empire delivered another veiled threat disguised as diplomatic courtesy. The reptilian diplomat's forked tongue flicked out as he spoke, tasting the fear in the air. Around the vast circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species watched the exchange with growing tension. "Your Highness," Krill hissed, his scales glinting under the chamber's artificial sunlight. "The Outer Rim territories have become quite unstable. Pirates, rebels, all manner of unsavory elements. Perhaps it would be wise for human settlements to withdraw to safer, more supervised regions." Princess Zara's knuckles went white as she gripped the throne's armrests. At 19, she was the youngest royal ever to address the Galactic Council, thrust into leadership after her father's sudden death. The weight of representing humanity's interests among species that had been spacefaring for millennia showed in the tight lines around her eyes. "The Terran Commonwealth appreciates the Zentari Empire's concern," she replied, her voice steady despite her youth. "However, human colonies in the Outer Rim are well protected and will remain where they are." A chorus of chittering, growling, and electronic whines erupted from various alien delegates. The message was clear. Humanity was still seen as the newcomer, the species that had only joined galactic civilization 2 centuries ago. They were tolerated, not respected. Marcus watched it all with the trained eye of someone who had spent 8 years in the British Special Air Service before joining the Royal Guard. He catalogued exit routes, potential threats, and defensive positions with automatic precision. His expression never changed, but his mind was constantly working. The Vorthak delegate, a being that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a wolf, clicked its mandibles in what passed for laughter among its species. "Humans and their bravado," it said, its voice like grinding metal. "You speak of protection, yet your military is laughable. We have seen your training exercises. Your soldiers stumble about like newborns." Princess Zara's jaw tightened. The criticism stung because there was truth in it. Humanity's military, while brave, lacked the centuries of experience that other species possessed. Their technology was adapted from alien designs often poorly understood. Human reflexes, while quick by human standards, seemed sluggish compared to species that had evolved as apex predators on worlds where everything wanted to kill them. "Perhaps," interjected the Catherian representative, a floating jellyfish-like creature that spoke through bioelectric pulses translated by machines, "the young princess would benefit from a demonstration. The Galactic Council has been planning a military exercise, a test of marksmanship skills, if you will." Marcus felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. This was a setup. The aliens had been planning this for weeks, maybe months. They wanted to humiliate humanity in front of the entire council, to prove that humans didn't belong among the galactic elite. Ambassador Krill's yellow eyes gleamed with anticipation. "An excellent suggestion. Each delegation could send their finest marksmen to compete. Nothing builds understanding between species quite like friendly competition." The word friendly dripped with sarcasm. Around the chamber, alien delegates were already nodding agreement. Some species prided themselves on their warriors. The Zentari were genetically engineered for combat, with enhanced reflexes and perfect vision. The Vorthak had hollow bones and could move like lightning. The Etherians could slow their perception of time, making split-second shots seem leisurely. Princess Zara looked trapped. To refuse would be seen as cowardice, confirming every stereotype about weak humans. To accept meant almost certain humiliation when their best military marksmen were inevitably outclassed by alien physiology. "The Commonwealth accepts," she said finally, her voice carrying across the chamber. Marcus stepped forward for the first time in 3 years of service. The sound of his boot on the crystalline floor seemed to echo like thunder in the sudden silence. Every eye in the chamber turned to him as he placed his hand on his sidearm. "I volunteer to represent humanity in this competition," he said quietly. The reaction was immediate. Laughter erupted from multiple species. The Vorthak delegate chittered so hard its mandibles clicked together. Even some of the human diplomatic staff looked embarrassed. The silent guard? Ambassador Krill's forked tongue flicked out in amusement. How delightfully quaint. A bodyguard who has never drawn his weapon in anger thinks to compete with warriors. Princess Zara turned to look at Marcus for the first time since he had been assigned to her detail. She realized she knew almost nothing about the man who had stood behind her throne for 3 years. His personnel file mentioned military service, but no details. He was simply listed as qualified for royal guard duty. Marcus, she said softly, using his first name for the first time. You don't have to do this. He met her eyes briefly, and she was surprised by what she saw there. Not the blank professionalism she expected, but something harder. Something that reminded her of her father's old war stories, of men who had seen too much and carried it quietly. With respect, Your Highness, Marcus said, his voice carrying a slight northern English accent. I believe I do. The chamber erupted in discussion as alien delegates began making wagers on how badly the human would lose. Some were betting on whether he would even be able to hit the target. Others speculated about what kind of spectacle his failure would create. Ambassador Krill raised a scaled hand for silence. Very well. The competition will take place tomorrow at the Orbital Range Facility. Standard Galactic Council rules apply. Each competitor will face progressively difficult challenges using their species' preferred weapons. The final test, he paused dramatically, will be conducted under combat conditions with live targets. The implications hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just about marksmanship anymore. This was about proving that humans belonged in galactic civilization, or confirming that they were still the primitive newcomers that many species believed them to be. As the session adjourned and delegates began filing out, Princess Zara remained seated staring at Marcus with new eyes. For 3 years she had taken his presence for granted, assuming he was just another ceremonial guard appointed by the Royal Protection Service. Marcus, she said as the chamber emptied, who are you really? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but carried the weight of old memories. Just a soldier, Your Highness. But tomorrow I'll be humanity's soldier. The Orbital Range Facility hung in space like a metallic spiderweb, its various platforms and chambers designed to test every conceivable form of combat across dozens of species. Princess Zara arrived early with her small entourage, her stomach churning with anxiety. The viewing platform offered a perfect view of the competition areas below, where alien marksmen were already preparing their exotic weaponry. Marcus had arrived even earlier, standing alone in the human preparation chamber. He wore simple black tactical gear instead of his ceremonial uniform, and for the first time since she had known him, Princess Zara could see the soldier beneath the silent guardian. His movements were efficient and purposeful as he checked his equipment. Is that all he's bringing? Asked Commander Harrison, the princess's military advisor, staring in disbelief at Marcus's simple loadout. While other competitors brought cases full of advanced weapons, Marcus had only a standard-issue pulse rifle and his sidearm. The Zentari marksman, Sektar, was adjusting a weapon that looked like it belonged in a museum of war crimes. The crystalline barrel hummed with contained energy, and targeting systems projected holographic overlays around his enhanced reptilian eyes. His genetically modified reflexes were already being tested as he tracked practice targets moving at incredible speeds. Nearby, the Vorthak competitor, Skithra, was performing what could only be described as a deadly dance. Its 4 arms moved independently, each wielding a different ranged weapon while its insectoid legs carried it in impossible acrobatic patterns. The creature's hollow bones allowed it to move like a lethal whirlwind, striking targets from angles that seemed to defy physics. The Etherian representative didn't even seem to be paying attention, floating in a meditative trance. But Princess Zara had read about their species. They could slow their perception of time during combat, making split-second decisions feel like leisurely contemplation. When they fought, reality bent around them. This is madness, muttered Dr. Reeves, the human delegation's xenobiologist. Marcus is going up against species that evolved as apex predators. The Zentari have reaction times 3 times faster than humans. The Vorthak can process multiple targets simultaneously. And the Etherians, she shuddered. They're practically precognitive in combat. Princess Zara watched Marcus through the observation window. He seemed completely calm, almost meditative in his preparation. She found herself thinking about all the times he had stood behind her throne, silent and still, Had he been cataloging threats even then? What was going through his mind during those long diplomatic sessions? The competition coordinator, a floating mechanical construct speaking for the AI collective, announced the first challenge through speakers that translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. Competitors will engage targets at increasing distances using their species' standard military weapons. Accuracy and speed will be measured. First challenge begins at 500 meters. Princess Zara held her breath as the competitors took their positions. The targets were standard military training holograms, humanoid shapes that would appear randomly across the range. Each marksman had 60 seconds to engage as many targets as possible. Sektar went first. The Zentari's enhanced eyes tracked targets before they even fully materialized. His crystalline weapon discharged bolts of coherent energy with surgical precision. In 60 seconds, he destroyed 47 targets with 47 shots. Not a single miss. The alien delegates in the viewing platform chittered and hissed their approval. Skithra's turn was even more impressive. The Vorthak creature moved like liquid death, its four arms allowing it to engage multiple targets simultaneously. It destroyed 53 targets in the same time frame, some shots taken while the creature was actually airborne, spinning between platforms. The weapon systems it used seemed to fire in impossible directions, guided by the creature's superior spatial awareness. The Etherean's performance was almost supernatural. Meditation became motion in the blink of an eye. The floating being seemed to know where targets would appear before they materialized. 58 targets fell in perfect sequence, each shot placed with mathematical precision. Time itself seemed to slow around the Etherean marksman. Then it was Marcus's turn. He walked to the firing line with the same measured pace he used when crossing the throne room. His pulse rifle was a standard Terran weapon, reliable but unremarkable compared to the exotic alien technology that had just been displayed. The alien delegates leaned forward in anticipation of watching the human fail spectacularly. The timer began. What happened next defied every expectation in the facility. Marcus didn't move like the other competitors. He didn't dance or enhance his perception or rely on genetically superior reflexes. Instead, he moved like physics itself. Every motion calculated, every shot inevitable. His rifle spoke in steady, rhythmic pulses. Target after target fell, but what struck Princess Zara was the efficiency of it. While the aliens had been impressive, there was something almost wasteful in their performances. Skithra's acrobatics, while spectacular, included movements that served no tactical purpose. Sektar's enhanced targeting systems occasionally locked onto targets that were already doomed. Marcus wasted nothing. Every step positioned him for the next shot. Every breath cycle timed perfectly with target acquisition. He moved through the range like he was solving a mathematical equation, each variable calculated and resolved. When the timer ended, the facility fell silent. Marcus had destroyed 61 targets, more than any other competitor, but the number wasn't what shocked the alien observers. It was how he had done it. Impossible, whispered Ambassador Krill, his forked tongue flicking nervously. Human reflexes cannot match Zentari genetics. Analysis indicates the human did not rely primarily on reflexes, reported the AI collective's mechanical voice. Combat movements suggest predictive algorithms based on pattern recognition and environmental factors. Dr. Reeves was staring at readouts on her tablet, her face pale with amazement. His shot groupings, they're not just accurate, they're predictive. He was shooting where targets were going to be, not where they were. Princess Zara found herself leaning forward, studying Marcus with new eyes. During the competition, his face had shown the same calm professionalism she knew from the throne room. But now she was beginning to understand that his silence wasn't emptiness. It was the quiet of deep waters. Commander Harrison was shaking his head in disbelief. I've seen human marksmen before. Hell, I am one. But this is something else entirely. The second challenge was announced, moving targets at 1,000 meters in a crosswind simulation. The difficulty had just doubled, and the alien competitors were clearly expecting the humans' luck to run out. But as Marcus stepped up to the line again, Princess Zara was beginning to suspect that luck had nothing to do with it. For 3 years, she had wondered why the Royal Protection Service had assigned such a quiet, seemingly unremarkable guard to her detail. Now she was starting to think she had been asking the wrong question. The real question wasn't why they had chosen Marcus to protect her. The real question was what they knew about him that she didn't. As the second round began, she noticed something else about Marcus's performance. While the other competitors were pushing their abilities to the limit, straining against the challenge, Marcus looked like he was barely trying. His breathing remained steady, his stance relaxed, his movements economical. He wasn't being tested by this competition. He was testing it. And from the nervous chittering beginning to emerge from the alien delegations, they were starting to realize it too. The human they had expected to humiliate was instead demonstrating something that transcended genetic enhancement or exotic technology. He was demonstrating perfect, lethal competence, and he was doing it as quietly as he did everything else. The 1,000-meter challenge revealed something that made the alien observers uncomfortable. While their champion struggled with the increased distance and simulated wind patterns, Marcus seemed to treat it as merely another variable in an equation he had already solved. Sektar's genetically enhanced eyes, perfect for close-range combat, showed strain at the extended distance. The Zentari fired 43 shots, connecting with 38 targets. Still impressive, but the cracks were beginning to show in what had seemed like biological perfection. Skithra's acrobatic approach became a liability at long range. The Vorthak's multiple weapon systems, designed for overwhelming close-quarters firepower, lacked the precision needed for distant targets. The creature's score dropped to 35 hits from 41 attempts. The Etherean's time dilation abilities proved less useful when targets moved unpredictably over such distances. Even slowed perception couldn't compensate for wind drift and target acceleration curves that changed mid-flight. 42 hits from 45 shots, still excellent, but no longer superhuman. Marcus approached the line carrying the same standard-issue pulse rifle. No enhanced optics, no gravitational compensators, no exotic targeting systems, just a weapon that any human soldier might carry, and a man who held it like it was part of his skeleton. The targets began their random patterns at the far end of the range. At 1,000 meters, they were barely visible dots moving against the starfield. The simulated wind patterns shifted every few seconds, requiring constant recalculation of trajectory. Marcus fired his first shot. Hit. He didn't pause to celebrate or adjust his stance. The rifle tracked smoothly to the next target, and he fired again. Hit. Princess Zara found herself holding her breath as Marcus moved through the course. There was something hypnotic about watching him work. No wasted motion, no hesitation, no sign of strain, just smooth mechanical precision that seemed to transcend human limitations. How is he compensating for the wind drift? Commander Harrison whispered, studying his instruments. He's not using any targeting computers, but his shots are accounting for environmental factors that should require complex calculations. Dr. Reeves was frantically taking notes. Look at his breathing pattern. It's not random. He's timing each shot to his respiratory cycle for maximum stability, and his stance adjustments. He's reading micro-vibrations in the platform structure to predict movement. When Marcus's time expired, the facility's AI announced his score with what almost sounded like confusion in its mechanical voice. Human competitor. 50 shots fired. 49 targets destroyed. The silence from the alien delegations was profound. What they had witnessed wasn't just good marksmanship. It was something that challenged their understanding of human capabilities. How could a species without genetic enhancement, without centuries of warfare evolution, without exotic sensory organs, outperform creatures literally designed for combat? Ambassador Krill's scales had lost their lustrous sheen, taking on the dull gray color that indicated stress in Zentari physiology. There must be some mistake in the scoring, he hissed. Humans do not possess such capabilities. All measurements have been verified, the AI responded. Human performance exceeds projected parameters by approximately 400%. The third challenge was announced. Rapid engagement of multiple targets in a close-quarters environment with obstacles and civilians. This was combat simulation at its most realistic. The kind of scenario where reflexes, spatial awareness, and split-second decision-making meant the difference between life and death. The other competitors had clearly expected this to be where human limitations would finally show. Close-quarters combat favored speed and reaction time, areas where alien physiology held decisive advantages. Sektar moved through the course like a blur, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to engage targets almost faster than cameras could track. But Princess Zara noticed something the alien observers missed. Several of his shots came dangerously close to civilian holograms. His speed was impressive, but it came at the cost of precision under pressure. Skithra's performance was a masterclass in controlled chaos. Forearms working independently, the Vorthak creature flowed through the obstacle course like deadly water. But again, there were near misses with civilians, and twice the creature had to pause to reorient when its multiple weapon systems created conflicting target priorities. The Etherean's time dilation abilities gave it a significant advantage in the tactical scenario. It moved through the course as if everyone else was standing still, placing perfect shots with supernatural calm, until it encountered a scenario where a target was using a civilian as a shield. The Etherean's enhanced perception time actually worked against it, creating analysis paralysis when split-second action was required. Then Marcus entered the course. What Princess Zara saw made her realize that she had never truly understood what her silent guardian was capable of. This wasn't the same man who stood motionless behind her throne for hours at diplomatic functions. This was someone who had been honed by experiences she couldn't even imagine. Marcus moved through the course like he had designed it himself. Every corner was cleared with textbook precision, every target engaged with minimal exposure to return fire. But what struck observers was how he seemed to know things he shouldn't know, where targets would appear, which directions threats would come from, how to position himself for maximum tactical advantage. "He's not reacting to the threats," Commander Harrison breathed, watching the display. "He's anticipating them." "Impossible," Dr. Reeves muttered, but her protest lacked conviction. "The course layout is randomized. The AI generates threat patterns in real time. There's no way to predict on what Marcus was predicting. Or something even more impressive. He was creating tactical situations where prediction wasn't necessary. Every position he took gave him multiple options. Every movement served multiple purposes. When targets appeared, he was already positioned to engage them efficiently. He moved like a man who had spent years in environments where a moment's hesitation meant death. Not the clean, controlled death of military exercises, but the chaotic, unforgiving death of real combat, where the only rule was survival. The course included scenarios designed to test judgment under pressure. Targets that might be civilians or might be threats. Split-second decisions about whether to take a shot that might save lives or might end them. Marcus navigated these moral minefields with the same quiet competence he brought to everything else. His shots were placed with surgical precision, disabling rather than destroying when possible, but showing no hesitation when lethal force was the only option. When he emerged from the course, his time and accuracy scores weren't just the best of the competition. They approached theoretical perfection for the scenario design. Ambassador Krill stood slowly, his yellow eyes fixed on Marcus with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. "What are you?" he asked quietly. Marcus looked up at the viewing platform, meeting the alien's gaze through the transparent barrier. For the first time since Princess Zara had known him, he spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm a soldier who learned his trade in places where genetic enhancement doesn't matter, where superior reflexes won't save you if you can't think 3 moves ahead, where the only technology that counts is what's between your ears." He paused, his expression still calm but something harder showing in his eyes. "I'm human, and sometimes that's enough." The implications of his words hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Every alien in the facility was beginning to understand that they had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed that because humans lacked obvious physical advantages, they lacked the capacity for true martial excellence. They were learning that excellence could be earned, not just inherited, and the final challenge hadn't even begun yet. The final challenge was announced with mechanical precision. Live combat simulation against autonomous war drones, programmed with the tactical knowledge of a dozen species. No safety protocols, no practice rounds, no room for error. The drones would adapt to each competitor's fighting style, learning and evolving their responses in real time. Princess Zara felt her blood turn to ice. This wasn't a marksmanship competition anymore. It was a battlefield where failure meant death. "This is barbaric," Commander Harrison protested, but his words fell on deaf ears. The alien delegations watched with hungry anticipation. finally confident that human limitations would be exposed when the stakes became lethal. The arena for the final challenge was a maze of industrial structures, catwalks, and hiding places that could have been lifted from any war zone in the galaxy. Shadows fell in complex patterns from artificial lighting that flickered unpredictably, creating an environment where superior vision might become a liability. Sektar entered first, his confidence returning now that the challenge had moved to actual combat. The Zentari's enhanced physiology had been bred for war, and facing lethal opponents was where his species truly excelled. The drones that emerged to face him were sleek predatory machines armed with energy weapons and equipped with adaptive AI. The battle was swift and brutal. Sektar's genetically enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge the drone's initial attacks, and his precision energy weapon carved through their armor with devastating efficiency. But as the combat progressed, the machines began adapting to his tactics. They learned to predict his movement patterns, to compensate for his enhanced speed. When the third drone managed to score a glancing hit on his shoulder, sending him crashing into a metal barrier, the watching aliens chittered nervously. Sektar survived the challenge, but barely, and only because the machines were programmed to cease attack once a competitor was significantly injured. Skithra's attempt was even more harrowing. The Vorthak's multiple weapon system initially overwhelmed the drone's defensive programming, but the machines quickly adapted to track all 4 of its arms simultaneously. The creature's acrobatic abilities became predictable once the AI learned to calculate trajectory patterns. The final moments of Skithra's challenge saw the insectoid warrior, trapped in a crossfire between 3 adapted drones, saved only by a desperate leap that sent it crashing through a supposedly reinforced barrier. It survived, but the message was clear. Even apex predator species could be pushed to their limits by sufficiently adaptive opponents. The Etherean's challenge was the most unsettling to watch. Its time dilation abilities gave it incredible advantages in the opening moments, allowing it to destroy 2 drones before they could properly respond. But the remaining machines began operating on accelerated timescales, matching the Etherean's enhanced perception. What followed was a battle that seemed to occur in slow motion from the observer's perspective, but must have felt like lightning-fast death to the participant. The Etherean's supernatural calm began showing cracks as the adapted drones predicted its movements with increasing accuracy. It won, but only by literally burning out its time dilation organs, a victory that came at the cost of permanent physiological damage. Then, the arena reset for Marcus. He entered carrying the same standard equipment he had used throughout the competition. No enhancements, no exotic weapons, no genetic advantages. Just a human soldier with a rifle, and whatever experience had shaped him in places Princess Zara was beginning to realize she couldn't imagine. The drones that emerged to face Marcus were different. The AI had learned from the previous battles, incorporating tactical knowledge from how Zentari, Vorthak, and Etherean warriors fought. These machines represented the accumulated combat wisdom of 3 species that had been perfecting warfare for millennia. Marcus studied the arena for exactly 30 seconds, his eyes moving in patterns that suggested he was cataloging every sightline, every potential position, every tactical advantage the environment offered. Then he moved. What happened next defied every expectation in the facility. Marcus didn't fight the drones, he hunted them. While the other competitors had engaged in direct combat, trading shots and relying on superior abilities to overcome their opponents, Marcus turned the challenge into something resembling an execution. He used the environment like a weapon, employing shadows, angles, and blind spots to control when and where engagements occurred. The first drone died, without ever acquiring a clear target. Marcus had positioned himself so that the machine's own movement cast shadows that concealed his muzzle flash, while reflected lighting gave him perfect visibility of his target. The shot came from an angle the drone's programming had calculated as impossible. The second drone lasted longer, but only because Marcus was using it to learn how the AI adapted. He allowed it to track him briefly, studying its reaction patterns, before disappearing into a maze of catwalks and emerging from a direction that exploited a gap in its tactical programming. "He's not fighting them," Dr. Reeves whispered, her voice filled with awe. "He's studying them, learning how they think." The third drone never had a chance. Marcus had identified a flaw in the AI's adaptive algorithms. It couldn't distinguish between tactical movement and apparent retreat. He led the machine into a pursuit pattern that ended with it flying directly into a prepared kill zone. But it was the fourth encounter that truly demonstrated the gulf between Marcus and the other competitors. The remaining drone had adapted to everything it had observed, incorporating countermeasures for every tactic Marcus had used. It should have been unbeatable. Marcus killed it with a ricochet shot that used the arena's geometry to strike from an angle that the machine's sensors couldn't detect. The shot required calculating angles off 3 different surfaces while accounting for the drone's movement, and the weapon's energy dispersion pattern was the kind of shot that existed in theory but should have been impossible in practice. When the arena fell silent and Marcus emerged uninjured, the alien observers sat in stunned silence. What they had witnessed wasn't just superior marksmanship or tactical thinking. It was something that challenged their fundamental understanding of what made a warrior. The machines had been defeated not by superior genetics or exotic technology, but by something far more dangerous: human ingenuity combined with experience earned in crucibles that had forged absolute competence. Ambassador Krill stood slowly, his scales now completely gray with stress. When he spoke, his voice carried none of its earlier arrogance. "You have surprised us, human. We had not expected your species to possess such capabilities." Marcus looked up at the viewing platform, and for the first time since Princess Zara had known him, he smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. "That," he said quietly, "was the point." Princess Zara realized that everything she thought she knew about her silent guardian had been wrong. The man standing in that arena wasn't just a soldier. He was the product of something that no amount of genetic enhancement could replicate. He was human determination refined into its deadliest form, and the aliens were finally beginning to understand what that meant. The victory ceremony was held in the main hall of the orbital facility, but the atmosphere felt more like a funeral than a celebration. Alien delegates who had arrived expecting to witness human humiliation now sat in uncomfortable silence, their entire understanding of galactic power dynamics suddenly thrown into question. Princess Zara watched. Marcus received the competition trophy, a crystalline sculpture that honored martial excellence across all member species of the Galactic Council. He accepted it with the same quiet professionalism he brought to everything else, as if dominating representatives of the galaxy's most feared warrior races was just another day's work. But the real ceremony was happening in the hushed conversations between alien delegations. Princess Zara caught fragments of discussion as species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found common ground in their shared concern about humanity's hidden capabilities. If one human guard can achieve this level of competence, the Vorthak delegate chittered nervously to its Centauri counterpart, what else have we failed to understand about their species? Ambassador Krill seemed to have aged decades in the span of a few hours. His earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by the careful wariness of someone who had discovered a sleeping predator in what he thought was a petting zoo. After the formal proceedings ended, Princess Zara found herself alone with Marcus in the observation deck overlooking the competition arena. The space was quiet now, but she could still picture the methodical precision with which he had dismantled opponents who should have been vastly superior. 3 years, she said finally. 3 years you've stood behind my throne and I never knew. Marcus was gazing out at the stars through the facility's transparent walls, his expression thoughtful. You weren't supposed to know, Your Highness. That was the point, but why? Why hide what you're capable of? He turned to face her, and Princess Zara saw something in his eyes she had never noticed before. Not hardness, but depth. Like looking into still water and realizing it was far deeper than it appeared. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon is the one your enemies don't know exists, he said. Every species in the galaxy has been watching humanity for 2 centuries, cataloging our weaknesses, measuring our limitations. They see our average soldiers, our civilian populations, our diplomatic corps. They think they understand us. He gestured toward the arena below where maintenance crews were cleaning up the debris from the drone battles. They were right about most of it. Humans aren't genetically enhanced for combat. We don't have superior reflexes or exotic sensory organs. Our basic military is competent but unremarkable by galactic standards. But, Princess Zara prompted, but we have something they don't. Something they can't understand because their evolution was different. Marcus was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. We came from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Not through war or predation, but through simple, relentless hostility. Climate, geography, disease, starvation. Earth never gave us a moment's peace. Princess Zara had studied human history, but she was beginning to understand it differently now. Other species evolved as apex predators on worlds that were fundamentally safe once they achieved dominance. The Zentari, for all their genetic enhancement, evolved on a planet where the biggest threat was other Zentari. The Vorthak homeworld has 3 apex predator species, but the environment itself is stable and predictable. Marcus moved to another window, one that showed Earth rising blue and white in the distance. Earth never stopped testing us. Even after we developed technology, even after we thought we had conquered our environment, it kept finding new ways to challenge us. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, pandemics. Our world has been trying to wipe us out since the day we learned to walk upright. The implications of his words were sinking in, and Princess Zara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the space station's environmental systems. We didn't evolve to be the strongest or the fastest, Marcus continued. We evolved to survive anything, to adapt to conditions that would destroy other species, to find solutions when there shouldn't be any solutions. And you? She asked quietly. What made you? Marcus was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of memories he clearly didn't share often. Special Air Service. 8 years. We were specialists in impossible missions. Hostage rescue, deep reconnaissance, counter-terrorism in environments where conventional forces couldn't operate. The kind of work where you learn that superior equipment doesn't matter if you can't think your way out of situations that should be impossible to survive. He paused, his gaze distant. Northern Ireland, Afghanistan, Syria, a dozen other places where humans were fighting humans with nothing but intelligence and determination. No genetic enhancement, no exotic technology. Just the ability to adapt faster than your enemies could counter-adapt. Princess Zara was beginning to understand why the Royal Protection Service had chosen Marcus for her detail. It wasn't just about protecting her from physical threats. It was about having someone who could think his way through any situation. After my military service ended, I was recruited for the Royal Guard program, not the ceremonial positions that most people think of, but the real protection service, the kind that deals with threats that could destabilize governments. Threats like today? Marcus nodded. The competition was never about marksmanship, Your Highness. It was about forcing humanity to reveal capabilities that certain elements in the galaxy would prefer remained hidden. There are species that benefit from the current power structure, where humans are seen as junior partners who need guidance and protection. The pieces were falling into place, and Princess Zara felt a mixture of anger and admiration. They wanted to humiliate us, to prove we don't belong among the galactic elite. They wanted to confirm their assumptions about human limitations. Instead, they learned that their assumptions were wrong. Marcus's expression grew harder, and now they have a problem. Because if they've been wrong about this, what else have they been wrong about? Through the observation windows, Princess Zara could see alien delegates boarding their shuttles for the return journey to the main council station. But their body language spoke of urgent conferences and emergency meetings rather than routine departure. What happens now? She asked. Marcus smiled again, and this time there was something almost predatory in the expression. Now they go back to their governments and report that humanity is not what they thought we were. Some will want to reassess their relationships with us. Others will want to test us further. And others? Others will want to make sure no one else learns what they learned today. The implication hung in the air between them. The demonstration of human capability that was supposed to secure humanity's place in galactic civilization might instead have painted a target on their back. But that's tomorrow's problem, Marcus said, his expression returning to the calm professionalism she knew. Today you successfully represented humanity before the Galactic Council. Your father would have been proud. Princess Zara felt tears prick her eyes at the mention of her father. For the first time since ascending to her position, she felt like she had actually accomplished something worthy of his legacy. Marcus, she said as they prepared to leave the observation deck. Thank you, not just for today but for these 3 years. I understand now why they chose you. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. It has been my honor to serve, Your Highness. As they walked toward the shuttle that would take them back to the main station, Princess Zara realized that everything about their relationship was going to change. She could never again see Marcus. as just the silent guardian who stood behind her throne. He was her introduction to a side of humanity that even she hadn't fully understood. The side that had earned their place among the stars not through superior genetics or advanced technology, but through the simple, terrifying competence that came from millions of years of refusing to quit when everything wanted them dead. And somehow, that felt like the most human thing of all. 3 weeks after the competition, the assassination attempt came exactly as Marcus had predicted it would. Princess Zara was reviewing trade agreements in her private study when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, bathing the royal quarters in dim red light. But those few seconds of darkness were all the attackers needed to penetrate the outer security perimeter. Marcus moved before the emergency alarms even started sounding. Princess Zara heard the soft whisper of his sidearm being drawn, followed by his calm voice cutting through the chaos. "Your Highness, behind the desk, now." She dropped without question, her 3 weeks of observing Marcus with new understanding, having taught her to trust his instincts completely. From her position on the floor, she could hear sounds that chilled her blood, the soft footsteps of intruders moving through her supposedly secure living quarters. "Palace security is compromised," Marcus said quietly, speaking into his communication device. "Multiple hostiles inside the royal wing. Initiating lockdown protocols." The response that came back made Princess Zara's heart stop. "Negative, Guard Chen. No hostiles detected on security sensors. Return to normal status." Marcus looked down at her and she saw something deadly settle in his expression. "They're not just inside the palace," he said quietly. "They're inside the security system." The first attacker came through the study door, moving like liquid shadow. Princess Zara caught a glimpse of form-fitting armor and a weapon that hummed with alien energy, before Marcus put 2 shots center mass, and the figure dropped without a sound. Zentari combat armor, Marcus noted clinically, examining the fallen attacker. Military grade, not civilian. "But the Zentari delegation left days ago," Princess Zara whispered. "The delegation that everyone saw leave," Marcus corrected. "Question is, how many stayed behind?" His communication device crackled again. "Guard Chen, report your status. Palace security shows all clear." Marcus looked at the device with something that might have been amusement. "Palace security is lying," he said simply, then crushed the communicator under his boot. The next few minutes taught Princess Zara more about real combat than years of security briefings had ever conveyed. Marcus moved through her quarters like he owned them, using furniture and architecture as weapons in ways she had never imagined possible. When 3 more attackers came through the main entrance, Marcus used the lighting system against them, triggering emergency strobes that turned the room into a disorienting maze of shadows and blinding flashes. The attackers' enhanced Zentari vision, so superior in normal conditions, became a liability when overwhelmed with conflicting visual input. He picked them apart methodically, using their own coordination against them. When they moved as a unit, he forced them into crossfire positions. When they tried to spread out, he used the room's geometry to isolate them. "How are you doing this?" Princess Zara asked during a brief lull in the fighting. "The competition," Marcus replied, reloading his weapon with practiced efficiency. "It wasn't just about demonstrating human capabilities. It was about studying alien tactics. Every species fights according to their physiology and training. Once you understand the patterns, they become predictable." More attackers were moving through the palace, but now Marcus was hunting them instead of defending against them. He had turned Princess Zara's quarters into a killing ground designed around human advantages, rather than alien strengths. "Stay here," he told her, moving toward the main corridor. "This ends now." What Princess Zara heard over the next 20 minutes sounded like a war being fought by one person. Gunfire, explosions, the crash of breaking furniture, and the occasional alien scream cut short. Then silence. Marcus returned exactly 23 minutes later, his black tactical gear torn and bloodied, but his expression as calm as ever. 17 attackers, he reported, all neutralized. "But we have a bigger problem." "Bigger than an assassination attempt?" Marcus activated a portable communication device he had taken from one of the attackers. Alien voices filled the room, speaking in rapid Zentari military dialect. "They're coordinating with someone inside the palace," he translated. "This wasn't just an assassination attempt, it was a field test. They wanted to see how effective human security really was when facing determined alien opposition. Princess Zara felt ice form in her stomach. And they learned that conventional human security can be easily bypassed. But they also learned that unconventional human responses can be problematic for their operations. The implications were staggering. The competition had revealed human military potential, but this attack had been designed to test human defensive capabilities. Both tests had yielded results that certain factions in the galaxy clearly found disturbing. "Marcus," Princess Zara said slowly, "what aren't you telling me?" He was quiet for a moment, and she could see him weighing how much truth she was ready to handle. "The Royal Protection Service didn't just assign me to your detail randomly," he said finally. "They've been preparing for this situation for decades. The competition, this attack, the political pressure humanity has been facing, none of it is coincidental." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that certain species have been maneuvering humanity toward a position where we would be forced to reveal our true capabilities. They wanted to confirm their suspicions about human potential before taking action to contain it." Princess Zara stared at him. "You're talking about a conspiracy involving multiple galactic governments." "I'm talking about realpolitik on an interstellar scale," Marcus corrected. "Humanity has been growing in influence and capability faster than anyone expected. Some species see that as an opportunity. Others see it as a threat that needs to be managed." "And you knew this was coming?" "I suspected. The signs have been building for months. Increased intelligence gathering around human military installations. Diplomatic visits to our colonies that included suspiciously detailed surveys of defensive capabilities. Trade negotiations that seemed designed to probe our economic resilience rather than establish profitable relationships." Marcus moved to the window, checking for additional threats while he spoke. The competition was meant to be the final data point. Once they confirmed human military potential, the next logical step would be to test our defensive reactions under stress. To see how we respond when our leadership is directly threatened. And what did they learn? Marcus smiled, and Princess Zara was reminded again of how dangerous that expression could be. They learned that attacking humans is very different from competing with them. Competition brings out our excellence. Direct threats. He gestured toward the corridor where 17 alien assassins had met their end. Direct threats bring out something else entirely. Princess Zara was beginning to understand the true scope of what had just happened. This wasn't just about her safety or even about humanity's position in the galactic community. This was about the fundamental balance of power between species that had been established for millennia. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now the real game begins," Marcus said. "Because they've learned that humanity can't be easily intimidated or eliminated, which means they'll have to decide whether to accept us as equals or try something more drastic." "More drastic how?" Marcus's expression grew grim. "They could try to unite the galaxy against us. Present humanity as an existential threat that requires coordinated response. It's been done before to other species, and if that happens, then humanity will learn what we're really capable of when we stop trying to fit in and start fighting for our survival." Princess Zara looked out at the stars beyond her window, suddenly seeing them not as points of light representing friendly neighbors, but as potential threats surrounding a small blue world that had just announced to the galaxy that it would not go quietly into any night. For the first time since her father's death, she felt ready for the responsibilities of leadership, because she finally understood what she was leading humanity toward. Not integration into galactic civilization, but the fight to determine what that civilization would become. 6 months later, Princess Zara stood before the Galactic Council once again, but everything had changed. The ornate chamber that had once felt intimidating now seemed merely theatrical. The alien delegates who had once looked down on humanity with condescension now watched her with the careful attention reserved for dangerous unknowns. Marcus stood behind her throne as he always had, silent and still, but now every delegate in the chamber was acutely aware of what that stillness represented. The assassination attempt had been officially blamed on rogue elements, but everyone understood the real message. Humanity was no longer the harmless junior partner they had believed. Ambassador Krill rose to address the council, his scales still showing the stress patterns that had become permanent since the competition. "The Zentari Empire wishes to propose new protocols for military demonstrations between member species," he announced. Recent events have shown that such competitions can lead to misunderstandings. Princess Zara almost smiled. The careful diplomatic language couldn't disguise what was really happening. The aliens were trying to prevent any more revelations about human capabilities. The Terran Commonwealth, she replied formally, supports any measures that promote understanding between species. However, we believe that true understanding comes from honest assessment of each other's abilities, not from hiding them. The Vorthak delegates' mandibles clicked nervously. Since the competition, several Vorthak military units had requested human tactical advisors. Their warrior culture couldn't ignore the lessons of Marcus's performance, even if their leadership preferred to pretend it hadn't happened. The Etherian representative floated forward, its bioelectric communications creating ripples of translated speech. The Etherian collective proposes expanded cultural exchange programs. We believe that greater interaction between our species will prevent the kind of misconceptions that led to recent unfortunate incidents. Princess Zara recognized the proposal for what it was, an intelligence-gathering operation disguised as diplomacy. The aliens wanted to understand humanity better, but they also wanted to monitor human development more closely. The Commonwealth welcomes expanded cultural exchange, she said. We propose that such programs include military and security training exchanges. After all, the best way to prevent misunderstandings is through professional cooperation. The chamber erupted in the multi-species equivalent of nervous chatter. The idea of humans training alien military forces was exactly what many delegates had been hoping to avoid. As the debate continued, Princess Zara found her mind wandering to the intelligence briefings she had been receiving since the assassination attempt. The attack had triggered a comprehensive review of humanity's position in the galaxy, and the results had been eye-opening. Human colonies in the Outer Rim weren't just thriving, they were expanding at rates that alarmed the established powers. Human traders were penetrating markets that had been closed to outsiders for centuries. Human scientists were making breakthroughs that challenged the technological supremacy other species had taken for granted. Most disturbing to the galactic establishment, human military advisors were being quietly recruited by species that had previously dismissed human combat capabilities. The competition had demonstrated that humanity possessed tactical thinking that could level the playing field against genetically superior opponents. The session was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Council's AI system. Alert. Priority communication from the Outer Rim Defense Fleet. Unknown vessels detected approaching core systems. Requesting immediate Council response. The chamber's main display activated, showing a tactical overview of the galaxy's core region. A formation of ships was indeed approaching from the Outer Rim, but their configuration was unlike anything in the Council's databases. Identification requested, came the voice of Fleet Admiral Kresh, a Zentari commander who oversaw galactic defense operations. The response that crackled through the chamber's speakers carried a distinctly human accent. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet, requesting permission to approach Council space under Article 7 of the Galactic Defense Accords. Princess Zara felt her heart skip. Article 7 covered mutual defense obligations between member species. Someone was invoking humanity's right to provide military assistance to the galactic community. Ambassador Krill's scales had gone completely white. Admiral Chen? But the only Terran military vessels in this sector are ceremonial escorts for diplomatic missions. Admiral Chen's voice carried a note of amusement that reminded Princess Zara strongly of Marcus's rare smiles. Ambassador Krill, with respect, the Commonwealth has never limited itself to ceremonial anything. The tactical display updated to show the approaching fleet in greater detail. 12 ships in a formation that spoke of serious military intent, but designed according to principles that the galactic powers didn't recognize. Admiral, came Fleet Admiral Kresh's voice, now carrying a note of concern. State the nature of your assistance mission. We've received intelligence indicating imminent threat to core system stability from extremist factions seeking to destabilize galactic government. The Commonwealth is offering military support under existing mutual defense agreements. Princess Zara glanced back at Marcus, who met her eyes briefly. In that moment, she understood that the assassination attempt had been more than just a test of human defensive capabilities. It had been the opening move in a larger conflict, and humanity had been preparing its response. The chamber erupted as delegates realized the implications. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was inserting itself into galactic security affairs as an equal partner. "This is unprecedented," chittered the Vorthak delegate. "No single species has invoked Article 7 without prior council authorization." Admiral Chen's response was crisp and professional. "Article 7 requires council notification, not authorization. The Commonwealth has determined that threats to galactic stability constitute a clear and present danger to human interests. We are prepared to fulfill our mutual defense obligations." Princess Zara stood slowly, feeling the weight of history settling on her shoulders. This was the moment her father had prepared for, even if he hadn't lived to see it. "The Terran Commonwealth," she announced formally, "stands ready to defend the principles and institutions of galactic civilization against all threats, foreign and domestic." The implications of her words rippled through the chamber. Humanity wasn't just offering military assistance. They were claiming the right to help define what those principles and institutions should be. Ambassador Krill spoke carefully, his voice showing the strain of a diplomat navigating suddenly dangerous waters. "The Centauri Empire appreciates the Commonwealth's concern for galactic stability. However, we question whether such dramatic military deployment is truly necessary." "That," said Admiral Chen's voice from the speakers, "is not humanity's decision to make alone, but neither is it any single species' decision to make for humanity." Princess Zara realized that everything since the competition had been leading to this moment. The demonstration of human capabilities, the assassination attempt, the careful political maneuvering, all of it had been preparation for humanity to claim its place not as a junior partner in galactic civilization, but as a defining force in its future. Marcus stepped forward for the first time in the session, his movement drawing every eye in the chamber. "Your Highness," he said quietly, but his voice carried in the sudden silence. "Admiral Chen is requesting permission to dock and brief the Council on the intelligence that prompted this deployment." Princess Zara nodded, understanding that this was the moment of transition. Humanity was no longer asking for acceptance into galactic civilization. They were announcing their intention to help lead it. "Permission granted," she said formally. "The Commonwealth looks forward to working with all Council members to address these mutual concerns." As the session adjourned and delegates began filing out in urgent conversation, Princess Zara remained seated, watching the stars beyond the chamber's transparent walls. Somewhere out there, a human fleet was approaching, with the backing of Earth's full military capability. Behind it, the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped trying to fit in and started making its own rules. Marcus remained at his post, behind her throne, silent as always. But now his silence spoke of readiness rather than restraint. The quiet guardian who had dominated alien warriors in competition and eliminated assassins in the darkness was no longer hiding what he represented. He was the calm before humanity's storm, and that storm was finally ready to break across the galaxy. Princess Zara smiled as she rose from her throne. Her father would have been proud. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as grateful recipients of alien tolerance, but as the species that would help determine what the future of galactic civilization would become. And they were just getting started.